Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a new episode of Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Here we are taking your questions. Is Lou Wasserman's Ghost? Lou, how you doing on the Spectre side?
Oh, just kind of a lazy, crazy, hazy day of summer, as Nat King Cole would have said. What was it? Soda and pickles and beer? I forget the lyric. Anyway, hi, everybody.
Well, I forget the lyric as well because I've never heard of it. So
You've never heard that song? Oh, God. Let's see.
I have not. I do apologize. I'm pretty good on the musical references, Lou. Whenever you do reference something, I'm usually pretty quick. But
Nat King
you know what?
Cole, The Lazy, Crazy, Hazy Days of Summer, popular song composed by Hans Karst. Oh, it was German. And they translated it. Of course they did. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Via Argentine, you could check our papers in order. I'm not supposed to do that. I keep forgetting. I'm so sorry.
Well, you can do the impression. You just can't say the.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, it was Swedish. Here, roll out those lazy, hazy, crazy days of summer, those days of soda and pretzels and beer, and dust off the sun and the moon and sing a song of cheer. Oh, here you go. Just fill your basket full of sandwiches and weenies, then lock up the house. Now you're set. Out on the beach, you'll see the girls in their bikinis. Bikinis and weenies. That's an interesting rhyme. As cute as ever, but they never get them wet. And it goes on and on in that vein. But anyway, okay.
Whoa. You see, they Disney could have done something really special by providing a...
Don't give them the idea. They'll do it with twins and Sith Lords. Well,
I was going to say country bears, but that's something as well. Yeah, that's probably where it would end up going.
We can't do country bears who symbolize alcoholism. That would turn off all of our fans who come spend $17.95 for some rot gut and plastic fruit juice out here at the parks.
At the park next door, right at Epcot, which you can take a convenient monorail line too. So there you go.
Leave the driving to us.
That is fantastic. Looks like we actually have some super chats in the
my
chat
goodness!
already.
Well, let us acknowledge them.
Whoa! Juliet with the €5. Thank you so much. Lou Wasserman's Ghost and VashSky, your favorite film.
Pounds sterling to me, but it could be wrong.
Favorite films each decade since the 1930s. Which genre do you not care for? This is a very interesting question.
Juliet,
I gotta think about this.
That's a long answer if we go through every damn decade. Pick a decade you like, and I'll pick a movie from that. How's that? Okay. But,
well, that's a good way of doing it. I like
the genre
that.
I don't like is self-important, boring movies. Does that qualify?
Yeah, I'm not really high on those self-important, boring movies either. I don't like them. But let's see here. Which genre do I don't like? Every once in a while, rom-com could be very, 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 very good. But it's probably one I'm backing away from slowly a little bit. If it's not,
keep your hands visible as you back away from the rom-com.
Yeah, exactly. Just slowly. Since the 1930s, that's a lot right there. I don't know if I can necessarily do that on the fly. I'll give you two though. I think in the 1970s, got to be Star Wars 77. It's got to be up there for me. 1980s, I was thinking about this a lot. Probably Back to the Future. Come on, it's like the pinnacle 80s, right in the middle there. It's a lot of people have classified it as a perfect film. I am.
It's not a perfect film. But anyway, I don't know what a perfect film is, but if there is one, that ain't it. But anyway, it's a good movie, but perfect. Anyway.
Fair enough. Well, you know what is perfect? Samuel Maine, providing us $3 via super sticker with a guy showing a thumbs up sign. Thank you so much for that. That is awesome. Very much appreciate that. And
Thank
then
you,
also
Samuel.
too,
And Juliet, I hope you didn't feel like we gave you short change there, but that was a monster question, and I don't think we're warmed up to it yet. We'll get there, okay? I promise you, we'll get there.
yeah, Juliet, if you're still in the chat, please select a decade, and then Lou will definitely not only talk about that specific decade, but also that film too. That'll be really, really nice. Space Dave 2000, always doing some great work over there. Now with that gameplays, which is very, very cool. Thank you so much with the Canadian $2. Have you ever fired anybody for substance abuse, Lou? It's a big one right here.
I have only ever fired anybody for attention span abuse. Mine. In other words, you can do a lot of things wrong, but bore me and you're out of here.
Yeah, that don't bore Lou here. Don't bore Lou, that's for sure. But substance abuse, that's a big one right there. Have you ever heard, Lou, of somebody, I don't know, being...
Well, sure, there are people who were so screwed up they couldn't do their job.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just reading in that book that I've been touting the last couple times about when MGM fired Judy Garland, who couldn't get to the set and couldn't get her act together and was doing a lot of drugs. And it was on the film Annie Gets Your Gun. It was supposed to be for her that wound up being Betty Hutton. But she went through a bad time. And anyway, and it was substance abuse, definitely. It's an interesting book. Boy, it gets real interesting when they get into the blacklist and the politics of all of these people who were refugees from World War II, but brought some of their left-wing politics with them and got in trouble with the post-war government. And anyway, but there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of fun. Oh, did I tell you about the musical part about Dmitry Tiomkin was hired by Selznick to try and do the score to the movie Duel in the Sun. And he said, I want 14 themes. He said, I want a Mexican theme, and I want a battle theme, and I want a love theme. And then he told him he wanted an orgasm theme. And he said, fine. And he went away and he wrote it all and he brought in the orchestra and played it all for Selznick. And Selznick went through it. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. And then he turned to him and he said, I'm sorry, you're going to hate me for this, but that orgasm one, that won't work. He says, what? He says, well, that's not the way I shtup. And he said, well, it's the way I shtup. And they argued over whether the music simulated what it was supposed to simulate. So
wow. That's
one of the many stories in that book that are fun. And I didn't do it justice because I abbreviated it, but you can read it.
Wow. Okay, I want to get back to this book.
All right, so
I want to get back to this book.
1930s. Let's see. Golly.
Yes, looks like Juliet has responded here. 1930s.
Well, that was an interesting era. Well, let's see. According to IMDb, the top 100. Let's see which one I like. King Kong, The Blue Angel, Les Miserables, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That's pretty good. Lost Horizon. That's pretty darn good. The Adventures of Robin Hood. I'll tell you what, The Adventures of Robin Hood, there's a whole lot more to that movie than you may remember. We probably, I think that's on our list for the genre guys. Stagecoach, All Quiet on the Western Front, The Bride of Frankenstein, not so much. That's a good movie. The Lives of the Bengal Lancers with Gary Cooper. Yeah. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. Yeah, that was really the era of those. Snow White is 1937. We forgot about that.
You know what? I did forget about that. It's probably going to be mine from that era, but
Tale of Two Cities. That's awfully good. Ronald Colman. He had the greatest voice. The original Frankenstein is from that era, which will all of those horror films will come back into prominence again now that Epic Universe is going to celebrate them so completely. Queen Christina with Garbo and John Gilbert. There's an interesting movie that most people probably haven't seen nowadays that would be worth going back to. The 20th Century. And it's all about the train, you see. Chaplin City Lights. The Thin Man. Star is Born. That was the original? Yeah, that was the original with Janet Gaynor and Frederick March. And then, of course,
I didn't know there was an original.
Yeah. Let's see. Charles Laughton in The Private Life of Henry VIII. That's an interesting one. You know, Henry VIII, the old joke about him was that when it came to his wives, he married them first and axed them afterwards. Night at the Opera from the Marx Brothers. Gunga. Oh, well, see, now there's one. Have you gotten to that yet on the replays of the genre guys? Gunga.
I have not. I think I'm a couple weeks away.
Yeah, well, in a couple of weeks then, or if you're a member on the Pro Channel, go over there and watch it. I'll tell you something. That is a pretty amazing movie. And if you watch it, consider that it was 1939 and there was no CGI and that they actually have all those thousands of guys out there on horses in the California desert pretending to be India. And it compares favorably for battle scenes, I would say, with Lord of the Rings. That's how good it is. That's how good it is. And it blew me away. I'd forgotten how good it was when we watched it again to do the genre guys. So there's one for you. That might be my movie for that period. Yes, I think so. I think so.
Wow. I cannot wait to edit that piece and provide
and go watch the movie, for God's sakes. Don't just watch our greatest hits moments. Go see the real thing.
Yes.
But let's see. I'm only halfway through. Top Hat is 1935. The sort of set the format for all the great Fred and Ginger movies. Ninochka, which of course was then made into the musical Silk Stockings, they're both great. You should watch both of them. One is Greta Garbo and Melvin Douglas, and the other is Sid Charisse and Fred Astaire. And speaking of musicals, The Gold Diggers of 1933 with Joan Blondell. Let's see, Hunchback of Notre Dame with Charles Laughton. The original Tarzan with Johnny Weissmuller. And then, boy, they churned him out. Look at there. Tarzan the Ape Man, 1932. Tarzan and His Mate, 1934. And several. Now here's a movie that I actually have the poster on my wall over here. In fact, you sat right under it when you were here. And that is The Prisoner of Zenda. Another Ronald Colman great one from 1937. And W.S. Van Dyke directed it. And, anyway, we could do this. Beau Geste, Captain Blood, Grand Hotel, Topper, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Gone with the Wind, of course, is 1939, and Stanley and Livingston, and the story of Louis Pasteur. Another great Fred and Ginger, Shall We Dance? Fred and Ginger and Edward Everett Horton. You might all know Edward Everett Horton by his voice as the narrator of Fractured Fairy Tales. But if you'd like to see him in the flesh, he's in all those great old Fred and Ginger movies. So there's some 1930s movies for you. And like I say, I'd lean awfully powerfully towards Gunga Din. I really would. So there you go.
You mentioned Gone with the Wind at that during that whole breakdown right there, that rundown.
Well, but that's of course literally at the very, very end. So
sure.
1939, but
It's part of that decade. Unbelievable success of the box office, earning $390 million in worldwide during its first release. At a time when it was probably like a quarter for a ticket. that's a very, very successful film. Huge, large scale, huge production out of the studio for that specific picture, based on obviously a famous novel, I believe. Very, very big. I wanted to go ahead and bring a couple of things to the audience's attention and to your attention as well. Though I don't know if you heard, but that we were very concerned going into 2024 with the box office, because obviously this is following the strikes. A lot of productions were shut down. Slim pickings over there at the cinema, and we were like, "Ooh, is it necessarily going to be a pretty rough year for those theaters?" Well, looks like sure enough, it's there's been a couple of pictures to come out, Despicable Me 4, Inside Out 2, and now Deadpool and Wolverine, that have really, really shaken up the box office. $438 million global for this opening of this Marvel picture right here. And, the Marvel news doesn't stop there. Also, too, we have, let me see here, the Russo brothers coming back to direct not one but two Avengers pictures. And guess who's coming back, folks? Robert Downey Jr. is coming back as Doctor Doom this time. But I want to ask you, Lou, I know we're not really a contemporary news show, but I wanted to ask you a couple of things on this. One, we were going back and forth on this before the actual show started, and you were saying it was quite depressing. Why don't you go ahead and explain to the audience?
Well, what I said was this. First of all, there's all kinds of rumors running around this thing. Supposedly, we have some sources that we can't reveal that say that this is all a put-up job, and he's really going to come back as Iron Man after all. And I don't know what's going to happen. But what I said was depressing was this. Here is a man of enormous talent who, if you know his life story, had gone through hell and come back again and gotten his act together and found this character that spawned really Iron Man, the very first one, is where the whole MCU began, the modern MCU, not all the false starts. And that character died, and it was a noble death. And everybody said, well, that was great, and now that's done. And he said, that was great, and now that's done. And then all of a sudden, here he is again. As who? Of all people. Now, obviously, I mean, they're talking, well, because of what happened with Kang, with the actor, they had to find a bad guy. And obviously, the one big Marvel bad guy that they've never really done justice is Victor Von Doom from Latveria. But you know what? He never takes his mask off, unlike Iron Man. And it seems to me, Robert Downey Jr., the whole key to him is his you should, for lack of a better term, wise-assedness. And Victor Von Doom has no sense of humor at all. I mean, he just never did and never has. So I don't know. But there you go. Jillian in the chat said lots and money. And I said to you, maybe, I mean, here's a man who just won the Oscar, and rightly so,
right,
for Oppenheimer.
Yep.
And has gone through all these different things. And maybe he and his agents looked out across the vast area of possibilities for what he could do next. Not that he really has to do anything again, as far as how much money. And what they found was there aren't enough non-Marvel, non-comic book, non-whatever places for him to go. And isn't that a damn shame? And that's what I was saying was depressing. Not that there's anything against comic book movies. We're all here because of them to some degree. But I guess he basically came back to them and said, okay, exactly how much will you pay me to be who for 2 movies? And this has got to be, what, for the 2 movies together with him? It's got to be a $50 million payday if it's a penny. And you can't say no to that, I guess, unless you just, I don't know, especially if you haven't got a better offer. And I don't mean
I
money
suppose so.
better offer, but an acting challenge better offer. So
Yeah.
I don't know what'll come of this. And obviously, none of us will know for another year or two. But
2026.
If it turns out this was all a put up job and he's really going to do Tony Stark again, then all those people at Comic-Con that got so excited about that unmasking are going to feel conned, and rightly so. And rightly so.
It's a fair point.
So I don't know where it's going. I'm just depressed by the whole concept of it, frankly, and that's just me.
I can definitely see that. And what I'm depressed about is potentially Disney not catching the message on what to do here. And what I wanted to broaden this question out and ask you, Lou, especially within this channel specifically, do the studios ever learn the right lessons? Or maybe, when it comes to box office failures or box office successes, is there ever a time when studios are like, you know what, that's what the audience wants, let's give it to them?
Well, I don't know. What do you think? Because obviously, if they have a hit, they say, let's make 12 more of the same thing. That's what they want.
Fair enough.
And if they have a flop, they say, well, we know better than they do. Let's just do the next sequel. What there is a dearth of, obviously, is original ideas. And I don't think that's because creativity has died or because there aren't writers or creators out there with ideas. It's because the executory parts of these massive corporations are trying, first and foremost, to minimize risk. And they think doing something people have already proven they like minimizes risk. Now, you can do it two different ways, obviously. Let's take the case of Inside Out 2 versus Minions, 4? The first one, yeah, it's great that they cut any or most semblances of wokeness out of it and made it what people have been asking for. And obviously, it's had huge success. Are they going to sell any plushies from that? Are they going to have any more rides from that? Is that going to have the kind of, what do they call it, the flywheel at Disney, where it leads to the parks and the cruise ship shows and one thing or another? I just don't know. On the other hand, the Minions have been proven to be a bonanza in that. So there's success and there's success, Anyway. By the way, I just noticed Juliet was talking about there is a live action. Well, don't hold your breath on Hercules.
Yes, yeah.
They've been talking about this for 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years with various casts, and somehow it just never seems to come together. And so if it does, great. If it doesn't, I won't be surprised.
It's funny because during that genre guys discussion of Hercules, you actually go over a potential live action I don't know, a film that was in development for some time. I guess what would be directed by the Russo brothers.
Yeah,
And
there was all kinds of variations. And there still are. And they've been talking casting. And, what a surprise. Danny DeVito playing Danny DeVito. For some reason or another, this is a movie that never seems to be able to come together. So if it does, I'd be happy to see it, but we'll see.
I'd also be happy to see a Hyperion version of this. People who don't know, Hyperion.
Well, don't hold your breath on that because that costs money.
And I know.
When they're cutting back entertainment at the parks all over the place. Besides, they wouldn't call it Hercules. If they couldn't call Captain America, they had to call it Rogers, the musical.
Right.
What the heck was that about? I mean, God. Anyway.
I know. It was a little off, and not the best production to ever be in the Hyperion at Disney California Adventure. But it's a great venue, and I think it would just work so well to be there. It's kind of sad to see that the biggest thing to happen within the proximity of the Hyperion is in its queue. You have a story time with Deadpool. That's been making all around. So it's like, can we get a production inside? C'est la vie, I suppose. But
especially
we do
in
have
the summer.
Right. It's hot out there. I mean, it was like
Yes.
97 the other day in Anaheim.
Is that where they're doing that Deadpool thing? I thought they'd be
Yep.
doing it over there where Doctor Strange used to be. But
You would think, but maybe that area is too themed for Deadpool. I'm not sure, but
I guess. But
also
Deadpool
too, wouldn't
kinda-
that have been great?
I think
could have
Deadpool transcends themes, but that's just me. But
Well, I
anyway.
don't necessarily disagree with you, but wouldn't that have been cool
Yeah,
to summon
yeah.
Deadpool to the universe? You could have
Yeah.
Doctor Strange as part of that show.
Yeah.
Actually, do that, but well, Doctor Strange is no longer there, which is really unfortunate. I guess you're right, Lou. They never do learn the right lessons. But speaking of right lessons, Mark
they learn
Dolly.
the lessons they want to learn, and whether they're right or wrong is who are we to say? We are mere mortals.
Yeah, I guess so. But Mark Dolly with $5. My favorite Western of all time remains Rio Bravo. Have you got any stories about that film? Any chance of adding it to the Genre Guys list?
It's actually on our list. It's one of several. The problem with John Wayne, which is not a problem for me, but a problem for us, is that he did so many, and we don't want to basically do nothing but Westerns or nothing but World War II or nothing but, so we're trying to kind of space them around. Another of his that we have on the list is Brannigan, which is, the American Cop in London movie that he did. But Rio Bravo, yeah, well, basically, after The Searchers, John Wayne intentionally moved away from Westerns, but he never had the success that he had with Westerns, so this was his first one back since The Searchers. And also, Howard Hawks did not want Ricky Nelson. He thought he was too young and too lightweight, and so they intentionally gave him the fewest possible lines they could. But later, Howard Hawks said having his name on the poster, because he was such a big hit as a music star, probably added a couple $1 million to the box office. And originally they wanted Elvis Presley, but then Colonel Tom wouldn't let him do it. And so, and then of course, Elvis went into the army just before it started. And, God. Oh, supposedly, here's a fun story about Rio Bravo, that Dean Martin's agent approached Howard Hawks to consider his client for the role of the drunken deputy dude. And Hawks agreed to meet with Martin at 9:30 the next morning. Hawks found out Martin had done his Vegas act until midnight, hired a plane to fly him to the meeting. He's so impressed, he simply sent Martin to get a costume and told him he had the part. Because
Man. Wow, that's
dedication.
that's something.
But Dean loved Westerns, and Dean really, really wanted to do them. And then when he started doing them on a fairly regular basis, he was good at it. But then we just went up on the Pro Channel, Airplane or Airport. I'm doing what Tables was doing, Airport, and he's awfully good in that. And when Dean Martin sets his mind to it, you have to think about Dean Martin. Here's a guy successful as a singer, obviously, successful as a TV star, successful as a dramatic actor, successful as a comedic actor, successful as a solo and as a part of a team with Jerry. This is a guy who did everything well and successfully. Started out as a dealer, in Steubenville, Ohio. So there you go.
Yeah, he's good at just about everything. He can play in the Westerns. He can play in, he was in the original Ocean's 11, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Rat Pack there, and big prominence in that film. I believe you guys have actually covered it on the Genre Guys.
Yes.
I cannot wait to edit that as well. Provide some visuals for people. But Dean Martin, he's
back to Rio Bravo and John Wayne. John Wayne was a little nervous about the romantic scene between him and Angie Dickinson, mainly because when they made the movie, he was 51 and she was 26. So,
whoa!
and Ricky Nelson was 18. Anyway, yeah, and
don't make them like that anymore, do they?
Yeah, well, the Duke said this was kind of his moving into middle age because he was not the romantic lead anymore. But really, the movie that did that for him is The Comancheros. The Comancheros is an important movie for John Wayne because he moves from being, again, the romantic lead to the older mentor to the romantic lead. In that case, Stuart Whitman? And that's a great movie too if you haven't seen it, The Comancheros. This was Rio Bravo, John Wayne and Ward Bond's last movie together. They made 22 pictures together over the years.
Whoa.
Whoa is right.
22. Think about it. I mean, most people who maybe actors who team up with a director or something, I mean, you're lucky to get like what, 5 or 6 films, maybe. Yep. 22. It's huge.
Yep.
Here's
a little bit of trivia for you, Rio Bravo fans.
Sure.
The cowboy that's killed by Joe Burdette that starts all the trouble, that's Bing Russell, Kurt Russell's father, uncredited.
Ooh.
Talk about 6 degrees of separation, huh?
Yeah, I guess so.
And anyway.
Wow. Well,
so there's a few things about Rio Bravo for you.
I'd say that's a decent $5 spent right there. Thank you so much for that. You've always been a big supporter of the channel and the channels. Thank you so much for that. We have a couple of questions coming in. Let's see if we can go ahead and get to some of those by, well, starting off with TLJ's Screwjob right here. Taking a bite out of the backlot is Lou Washman's Ghost going to talk about actors that chew the scenery. What do you think, Lou?
First of all, if you've never tried it, give it a shot. It's tasty sometimes. Certainly broken windows that are made out of sugar glass and other things that we use on the set. Anyway, actors that chew the scenery, that's called a bad director. Director's supposed to stop them from doing that. And if they don't stop, well, you find a way to get them to stop, basically by not shooting them and getting rid of them and not Look, 99% of everything is casting. 99% of everything is casting the right person to begin with. It's what keeps you from having to make those expensive reshoots after you're weeks and weeks into the movie. But as far as chew the scenery, that, of course, a lot of them do. In fact, if you want to see something funny, one of the movies that we did on the Genre Guys that I think is here already is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And if you watch that movie, watch Milton Berle. Remember, there's 3 or 4 cars, and they're all chasing each other and going across the desert and stopping and starting and getting out and getting in. Every single time that they stop and everybody gets out, Milton Berle manages to be the last one in when they get in and go away. Every single time. He'll push somebody in front of him so that he gets that little bit of extra screen time because that's just the way he was. So that's something kind of fun to watch.
Yes. It's and to learn more about this specific picture and all the pictures that have been released via the Genre Guys, you can go over to T3PO or that pod place. Check that out. Episode 9, it looks like. So there you go. You can go ahead
and as I was saying, that poster that you used there, if you can find the original, it's worth a fortune. It was drawn by Jack Davis, the Mad Magazine illustrator. And people have found those at like garage sales and then put them up for auction and gotten, I think the highest I ever saw was $250,000 for that poster because it was so rare.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So.
Well, I mean, you feature so many people of the era as part of that cast in that poster, and so to do an illustration like that, I could definitely see that going for big money. But just a fascinating history surrounding that film. For example, like the what is it? The owner of In-N-Out was so inspired by that picture and the kind of the X marking the spot there.
Yeah, the big W. The big W.
Oh, so yes, the big W. Sorry.
And that's where those palm trees at In-N-Out come from, both at the restaurants and on their paper plates and cups and things.
Right. This is so fascinating. The connection there. Really, really cool show. Really, really cool history is attached to that movie. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's see if we have any more questions. We have one from Jillian N. I was today years old when I found out that the first zombie movie, White Zombie, came out in 1932 and got their name from the movie. I would think so. I have to look at that. Obviously, you have Rob Zombie attached to White Zombie famously, but I pretty good guess that's where it came from. But Lou, you were talking about the kind of the 1930s or that era monster films coming back into relevance via
because
Epic Universe.
Of the Epic Universe, sure. Because they're all in that one ride, actually, and then except the Wolfman who's in the other ride. So go figure. What is it? Somebody asked a question about Audrey Hepburn. I'm trying to find. Oh, there we go. The answer, Don CK, as to what's my favorite Audrey Hepburn movie, by far, it's Charade. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't know by your standards, but that's my favorite. And as far as Hollywood, we're 25. Jan Monroe asked about 25 years separation between leading man and leading. Yeah, who knows? Who cares? It might be uncomfortable for them, but for the audience, it seems to work if they're big enough stars. Anyway, golly, so many questions. Charade is a really, really wonderful movie. And of course, when you've got, talk about a difference in ages too, between Cary Grant and her in that movie. But
yeah, I was about to say,
I know exactly what the difference is, but
they don't.
But she was so sophisticated. And anyway,
you don't typically, hook up actors the same way they did before, I suppose. Where you have Cary Grant hooking up with Audrey Hepburn at the time. What, that would have been maybe like a 10, 15-year difference there?
Yeah, something like that. Whatever.
Wow. Well, there you go. Audrey Hepburn, so incredible, such an amazing figure,
and that movie, I mean, has all these great people, the bad guys, Walter Matthau and James Coburn, and a bunch of people are all out after the prize, so to speak. A friend of mine, Peter Stone, wrote that, and Stanley Donen and Henry Mancini. You got a lot of good people involved in this movie. Skiing in, what was it, in Zermatt or one of those places in Europe, and then back to Paris, and good music, good theme song. Doom, 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 doom. Remember? Charade. In those days, that all that music mattered. Anyway.
Fantastic. We got a couple. We got another one right here. John Monroe. Did Kurt Russell ever buy the bike?
I have no idea. He
said he got into the movies to buy from himself and his sister. Wow. I have no idea, but I will tell you.
But I've heard the story. Yeah. I don't know if he ever did.
I don't know if he ever did. I will say this though, Kurt Russell, very interesting history connected to the Walt Disney Company, as Walt Disney, one of his final addresses to the public was him kind of endorsing Kurt Russell as a great actor who was up and coming and who was going to do some great things.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting little throwback there. If anybody can find that footage on YouTube, it's definitely worth a watch, because you wouldn't think that Kurt Russell and Walt Disney had anything to do with each other, but they have, and they have several times, which is interesting. We talked about on a prior show, I don't know if it was this show or another one, but the connection to the Haunted Mansion, obviously, when that attraction opened in 1969. I believe Kurt Russell teamed up with the Osmonds to promote that.
Yeah, there was a whole
attraction
series on the Disney show. Well, they were selling young people,
Yeah, that's true.
It was not about the parents thinking, oh, they're cute. It was about the kids thinking, I want to be him. So,
that's true. Man, that's a real good point. But just a fascinating history there with Kurt Russell. But as far as the bike story, not quite sure. Let's see here. What we got another
Good
question
choices,
from
too,
John.
Don. Go. Which question would you like?
Which one do you have?
No, I would just. Don responded to my pick of charade and said he likes Sabrina and Roman Holiday, and so do I. But, anyway, why did Dice Media Group says why does it really cost so much money to do dramas? I've never understood why you need over $10 million to do a drama movie with. Well, just to say yes, let's do it. You need $10 million these days,
Right. It's kind of like
there was a famous joke around town, and not really a joke, when Easy Rider, which you may all remember, came out, and it was made for about $9.5 million. And it became the biggest box office movie in history. When it did that, it displaced The Sound of Music as the top of the charts, so to speak. And The Sound of Music cost $4, $5, $6 million. And so the question around town was, so does this mean the major studios are now all going to start doing movies for $1 million or less? And the answer was no, because you can't steal $1 million out of $1 million budget. So $10 million is not a lot of money, unfortunately, as far as movies are concerned. You have to remember also a lot of it has to do with the cast and the acquisition of the property. And, in the old days, in the studio days, when you signed a contract, let's say you were, Betty Davis, and you signed a contract with Warner Brothers, and they were paying you so much a week, $2,000, $5,000, whatever it was. And Columbia or Universal wanted to use you in a movie they had, and they would go to Warner's and say, we want to borrow Betty. And they'd say, great, I'll let you have her for, say, I'm paying her $5,000 a week. You can have her for 20. And the studio pocketed the other 15. So that's the kind of games they played. David O. Selznick was famous for the fact that he had all kinds of people under contract that he didn't make that many movies, but he made a fortune on the loan out fees. So to ask how come it costs so much, because it costs so much. And the fact that it's a particular genre that doesn't have a lot of special effects or fancy sets or distant locations, that's important, but it's not that important. It really isn't. Anyway.
Yeah. I was about to say, it's not really about, the cost of the movie per se, but even just to start any production at all. I think you hit it at the top there. The buy-in is so large now. You gotta have a film crew attached to all these projects, and film crews obviously cost money, and post-production.
Good people demand compensation,
right,
equivalent to their skills. So
Robert Downey Jr. famously took a huge pay cut in order to be part of Oppenheimer, for example, because obviously Christopher Nolan was very limited on the funds that he could use for that film. It was kind of a big risk by Universal to pull that off. So, yeah, I mean, I think
I was watching an interview with James Woods the other day with Megyn Kelly, and he's the one who owned the property.
Yes,
he and his partner had bought the book. And when they decided to make the movie, they asked him to kind of disappear because of his politics, and he was happy to do it because they were worried people would boycott the movie because they didn't like him because he's conservative. So
I wouldn't say he was happy to do it. He seemed a little bit.
He understood the biz, So anyway.
Right. And a lot of people didn't know that he had anything to do with that movie, but he's in there as an executive producer. Obviously, he was very instrumental in getting that whole thing made. I think he had been shopping around for a director or a studio to take that film on for a number of years before that.
It was based on way back when.
Right.
So
anyway. Right. But it just goes to show you, which by the way, it brings up another question, Lou, that I had for you. You talk about this amazing book that you are reading right
City
now.
of Nets, yeah.
And you talk about Blacklist that happened. I know we're going.
That's a long complicated story. I don't know if we want to go into all of that, Vash, but after World War II, remember, in World War II, we were allies with Stalin. And some people felt it was patriotic to promote Russia. And after the war, when the Cold War ensued, people decided that wasn't such a great idea. And a lot of people got caught in the middle. And it was, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? And a lot of good people had bad experiences. So the book goes into all of that in great detail. And it does a better job of it than I can do here. But
well, I just find it interesting that almost a similar blacklist has returned, but obviously it's directed at another, let's say, politically unfavorable.
Well, the interesting part is, in fact, I literally just got to the part in this book which about the end of the blacklist, talking about what's called the Unru Law.
Yes.
Which is the law that is being used in the Gina Carano case, which in California, it is specifically prohibited for an employer to in any way do something negative to somebody based on their political beliefs or expressions. And that was created to try to protect left-wing or socialist or communist thought and expression in Hollywood. And now it's being used against Hollywood for doing it to Gina Carano for her allegedly right-wing expression. So what goes around comes around, as they say.
And if you want to learn more about this specific case and actually the recent decision made by the judge in this case.
Yeah, quite a case.
You find the video with Ron Coleman. It's about 40 minutes, but trust me, folks, I've cut it up for you. It's really piffy. It's really, really quick. It is a
typically,
fascinating
folks,
listen.
if you're not aware what happened, the big reason why it's getting attention again is that when this case was filed by Gina Carano with the legal and financial backing of Elon Musk, Disney immediately said, well, we want to file a motion to dismiss the case entirely on the grounds that we can hire or fire anybody we want because it's our freedom of expression under the First Amendment. Well, no, it's not. And the judge has thrown out that request to dismiss. So now the case is going to go through with its process. And the next piece of the process is what's called discovery. And that is when all of the backstage emails and paperwork and discussions that went on within Disney will come to light. And that's the one thing they did not want to happen. So we shall see.
Man, it is very, very interesting, this case. But like you said, Lou, it has a lot to do with a time period in Hollywood that was a dark period. And obviously, you enact laws in order to correct for that. Now, Ron Coleman, it's like, is the Unruh Act even constitutional? It looks like, Disney didn't even attempt to question the constitutionality of it. It's just a fascinating listening, guys. If you like this stuff, if you like this kind of content,
it's Perry Mason with real people, folks.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Oh, we need Perry Mason.
A little bit of Perry Mason, a little bit of Agatha Christie, a little bit of I don't know. It's an interesting world when companies decide to put political motivations to their actions, and take somebody who was a star that they grew, that they told her your life is about to change. We're going to spin off a whole new series with you. The people love you. When's the last time you heard anybody say anything about any of Disney's Star Wars stuff like that?
Yeah.
And suddenly they didn't like her anymore because she wouldn't give her pronouns in her social media. And when she finally did, she used, beep, bop, boop, droid sounds. They didn't like that. They have no sense of humor.
It's so crazy.
There you go.
It is it is pretty crazy, the time period in which we live in. Funnily enough, you mentioned, Lou, people not liking necessarily Disney's work with the Star Wars franchise. I'm reminded of a recent story coming out about an adult actress suggesting that, well, I just saw The Acolyte, and I'm pretty sure I produce better Star Wars movies myself. And I was laughing because it has become kind of a joke. And this is something that they bought for $4 billion at one point. It's just kind of fascinating how all these things end up, so to speak. But we have a couple of questions that people have actually given us via t3ponline@yahoo.com. I kind of wanted to go ahead and touch on. We've actually been saving these. If you're going to see the date, folks, I'm so sorry that I haven't been able to get to these sooner. But these live shows, what's great about it is that we get to interact with the audience as much as we do, and we just love doing it. But we would feel remiss if we didn't at least attempt to get to these questions that so many people have amazingly given to us. This one from Mary. I'm not going to read the entire question because we're going to be here all day if I do. But
haven't we been here all day already? I don't know. All right, so this is a long question about acting, and refusal to show emotion in their acting. I don't think that's true. If shows do that and they think that's a good choice dramatically and it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
Well, let me try to distill this down, and I'll go ahead and ask the question to you, Lou. There is a belief that British television is better than American television. Why do you think that might be?
Because people haven't seen all of British television. We only get the good stuff, or the relatively good stuff. We used to get a whole lot less, and then we really got only the creme de la creme. Now we have Acorn and BritBox and all these British spin channels on the various streaming services.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, since 90% of the stuff they bring to our attention, the stuff that isn't period romance, is detective stuff. Britain's a relatively small country. I'm surprised they haven't depopulated it with all the murders they put on TV.
It's relatively small. There have been some amazing productions to come out of British television.
It's a different financial situation.
Right.
Nobody who's a star of a British series is making anything close to what the second lead on an American hit series is making. Nobody is it's a different world. And for people who think it's so much better than ours, I could point you at some real stinkers, but you'll never be able to see them because they don't bring them over because they stink. Obviously, although I like British comedy, a lot of people just don't get it. It's a different reference set. Even then, when you watch, say on YouTube, a stand-up like I love Sarah Millican and I love Jimmy Carr and I love Michael McIntyre, but they'll still refer to stores and companies that we know nothing about that go right over American heads because we don't get the reference. So.
Right.
Who was it?
That's true.
Was it? I want to say Benjamin Franklin, but I don't think it was. Who said that? Oh, maybe it was Churchill. I don't remember who said it, but somebody said we're two great nations separated by a common language. So we don't see the world the same way, and we never will, and that's fine. I feel that way about Canada. Most people, the Canadians are just like us. No, they're not. No, they're not.
They're different. They're very distinct regions, very distinct places.
Anyway, I don't know what else to say about that.
Well, that's completely fine because we have And by the way, just want to say thank you so much, Mary, for that question. Definitely had us thinking. That is for sure. And we have another question from Kay right here. This one I think is a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
Talking about epics, talking about the perspective.
Okay,
of
I have
Hollywood
answers to all of these. Go
Please,
ahead and ask me the question. I'll tell you.
you got it. I've always been a big fan of swords and sandals epics from the 1950s and 60s, ones like the Ten Commandments, The Robe, and Her, etc. I was curious to know if Luke's Ghost knows any fun facts about these films, or fun facts about the cast and crew, like director Cecile B. DeMille, who I know is a rather legendary figure that I've lately been studying about. Go ahead, Luke.
Well, lots of people cut their teeth, you should pardon the expression, on these things. Sergio Leone's dad was a big, busy production manager and assistant director on these movies, and so was he at the beginning. Not so much the famous titles here, but all of those Samson and the vampire whatevers, and Jason and the Argonauts, and all of those mythology ones. Which brings us to the second question, and I can answer with a 3-letter word: God.
Yes.
These modern attempts are all of those up above, in one way or another, have something to do with Christianity and Christ and the Roman Empire and all of that. And
good point.
when you take that out of it, it becomes a bunch of guys in skirts slashing each other, which is fine for half an hour, but 2 hours, not so much. By which I mean, and that's not a criticism of a godless society or anything like that. I'm just saying people, and the same is true, by the way, for all of those horror movies we were talking about, that people felt like, raising the dead from a bunch of pieces of a body, Frankenstein, was trying to be God, was sacrilege, was going into areas that mankind should not go. Why do you suppose they used a cross to ward off the vampires and the werewolves, or silver bullets, or all those other symbols of purity? There was a common culture underpinning all this stuff. And when you take that out of it, because, that's that old hat stuff, you miss a lot of the automatic, don't have to pay for a set or a costume or a character to get it, import and power and backdrop and significance to the whole thing.
I think you're...
Let's see. Unconventional advice for hopeful screenwriters, directors who might be watching. I don't know if it's unconventional. Quit. No, that's I don't mean that, but just be humble, pay attention, and if you really mean it and you really think it's what you need to do with your life, by God, don't give up. On the other hand, when I was a million years ago at film school, USC Cinema, famous college for that, and there were people there with me, nice people, wonderful people, smart people, to whom I said, somebody, a faculty counselor or somebody, should sit them down and say, listen, you're smart, you're wonderful, this isn't for you. Go be a plumber, go be a brain surgeon, go be a philosopher, go be a history teacher, but this just isn't for you. So be realistic. If 50 people tell you no, you can say, what do they know? Well, hopefully you're not even bothering to ask the question, let alone get the answer from anybody who doesn't know. And you know what I mean? I mean, if it's somebody with some serious experience and chops and proven talent, and they tell you it ain't working, and they tell you why, listen to them. Listen to them.
I would agree. I think that's great advice, and somebody coming up in the industry, I think it's, I think your insights are invaluable.
I used to say that there should have been a class when I was at film school called Reality of the Biz 101. The class met 8 hours a day, 7 days a week for a whole semester. And nobody checked you in, nobody checked you out. They didn't take attendance. You didn't have to write a paper. You didn't have to answer a quiz. There were no lectures. It was just an empty room with desks for the students and a phone. And nobody made you go. You didn't have to be there. But once in the entire semester of 8 to 5, that phone was going to ring. And if you were there, you were going to at least pass the class. And if you weren't, you were done.
Reality of the biz.
And that's now, once that phone rings, you got to be ready. You got to have your skills, and you got to have honed your craft on something. And you have to, to some degree, you don't become a veteran of 50 productions, but you have to have some knowledge, some savvy. It never ceased to amaze me how many people would work in the biz at whatever job they were doing, mm-hmm. and pay no attention to everybody else and what went on. Never got, if you will, the zen of how things work.
Right.
I would go, you're here all the time, and you don't understand why that's not the right thing to ask or say or do, and this is, and why that doesn't work, and this will. Where have you been? And the answer, I don't know. They just didn't pay attention.
It's not all about the art. It's about, reading the room and understanding the pitfalls in the industry. It's so true.
But you don't know that until you've been around it for a while. And so get in it if you can afford. See, that's the other thing. Being able to afford a bad job and stay in LA is a trick that I wouldn't know how to master now. Cost of living and all that. So anyway.
I wanted to go back to touch on something that you brought up before there. I believe, Greco. Sorry. The Ten Commandments were with Charlton Heston would be nothing without its biblical impact. You talk about the monoculture. You talk about how we used to have a culture that was, I don't know. It was, I think you could relate more to all those around you because you did share a culture in that way, if that makes sense. And that would become so disparate because, for one, the internet's kind of, created a lot of these groups. But two, so many people are interested in so many different things, so many different cultures and so forth. And so we all have different values. And so what do you see now? Well, you not only see people not even attempting to, even attempt to appeal to that monoculture or the things that relate us all and bring us all together. But I mean, look at the introduction to the Olympics, for the example. I mean, it's like, whoa, what is this? And it's like, this is a subgenre, a subgroup, very nihilistic in tone and fashion and so forth. And obviously people hated it to the point where they're taking it offline, interestingly enough.
That's why they do it. We didn't mean to offend anybody. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You got your 15 minutes of fame. Right. Enjoy it. Bye. Millions of dollars in sponsorship is already being pulled.
Yep.
And rightly so. And let me tell you something, folks. The Olympics, since the beginning, is a business. It's not some hallowed, humanistic ode to sports and competition and human endeavor. It's a business. It's a gimmick. It's a game. And if you can buy that and enjoy the competition, swell. But it's no less a business than the WWE, let alone the NFL. And so for somebody to have decided this is okay, we'll do this as our opening, was a bad business decision.
Terrible.
And that's terrible. Really all it's worth saying about it. It's people are offended. Why would you be, why let these pissants get you going? Why give them the satisfaction of, we did what we wanted to do. We got all those evil people to get angry at us. Aren't we swell? I just yawn and turn the page. That's all.
Right. Right. And definitely, folks, instead of, well, I mean, obviously you can be offended or mad at anything you want, but alternatively, support the things that that don't seek to offend you, but seek to entertain you. I think that's the a big lesson to take away from Matt, like us, by the way. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Definitely did appreciate all of the amazing questions coming in right here. You know, Lou, it's funny because it's like trying to put the show together, trying to see where it goes, where it takes us. But the great thing about the live show is that we get so much feedback.
It's a roller coaster without a track in sight. We just roll.
Or without censor on. So,
no censor around. Darn it.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us on this just fantastic episode. Talked about a lot of great stuff right here. Hopefully we did take a little bit of that deep dive into classic Hollywood.
Hey, here's an interesting point that before we go, John,
please.
Mark Dolly mentioned about Houston. Mm-hmm. He was an atheist, but he made the movie The Bible, telling the story from Adam to Abraham, and gave it more reverence. Why?
Good point.
Because whether he personally believed, he knew that it was culturally important.
Right.
And that much of what everybody did in other things, whether it's commerce or culture or anything else, was based in that common belief. And, one of the things we keep losing as we shatter institutions, I think I told the story once that it used to be back in the days of radio. There was this show, Amos and Andy, and it was the most popular radio show on the air. And I think it was on Sunday nights. And the story was, and this is back in the 20s and 30s, when there was no such thing as air conditioning in everybody's house. And on a summer evening, you could walk down any street in America and listen to the show, because everybody had it on and everybody had their windows open because it was hot. And there were no transistor radios in your pocket and there was no internet. You just listened and it took you places. Well, we all used to go to these movie theaters and we're falling away from that with the big screen in our basement and with the bad stuff at the theater and with the strikes making fewer pictures and all the other things. Shared communal experiences, shared education, shared understanding of what came before is not, as some people might say, stifling or straitjacketing or forcing us all into the same mold. It just gives us a place to stand where we're all the same or have a basic foundation. And then where you go from there is up to you. You can go for it, against it, around the corner of it, whatever. But that's why, as a storyteller, he realized, regardless of his personal belief or disbelief in the spiritual side of it, it was an important story to tell. So, not a great movie, by the way. Anyway, I mean, he did
one last dig.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's profound.
And it didn't do particularly well at the box office because already that was being considered just old hat, So there you go.
Profound statements there, Lou. I think it's such a great point. I think it's such a great thing to be reminded of. Common experiences, they do matter. And well, one of the best common experiences that anybody could have is at the theater. So we will definitely see you then. If you want to go ahead and drop us a question, go ahead and do so at T3P Online.
And enjoy the Genre Guys shows that we do. Remember, they show up first run for members only on the Pro Channel.
Yep.
And then, 3 months officially later that they come here? 3 months later, they come here. So, for example, this week, Pro Channel came up with Airport. And this week you put up, Hercules is the most recent one?
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
And then we're recording like 2 at a time the last couple of weeks because we've got travel plans to work around. So we're putting some in the bank. But tonight we are doing a fabulous doubleheader. And that when I say we, that's Hangry Tables and Lorne Connor and I. We are the Genre Guys. And tonight we're doing two really, really great movies. Now, whether they will air in this order or not, I don't know, because like I say, we're doing a couple so we can have one as a spare for an off week when we have other plans. But tonight we are doing, let's see how many people have heard of these. First one I bet you've all heard of because it's relatively recent and it's great. And that is Master and Commander at the End of the World.
Oh, man, that's a great film.
A view, as I said in my jokey thumbnail, A View from the Crow's Nest, as in Mr. Crow, the star. The Crow and the Vision, we should say, because Paul Bettany is Dr. Maturin. And I've forgotten how wonderful it is. And by the way, in case you didn't know, the movie was made on that same special gimbaled arm pool set that was built to do Titanic down in Baja. Only in this case, instead of the ocean liner, it's the Surprise. And a good friend of mine produced it. Now gone. Ah, well. And then the other movie we're doing, anybody like a good steak? I mean, if you like beef, you want to see this movie because it's about beef. But it's about beef as a weapon of war because, as its little prologue says, all throughout history, food was one of the most powerful weapons of war because if the army couldn't eat, they couldn't fight.
Absolutely.
This is a movie about a Mexican cattle guy played by William Holden, who is bringing a herd of beeves up to sell to the Union Army during the Civil War when he is intercepted by the Confederate Army in the form of Richard Widmark. And then they lose him back again to the Union. And then they're going to go steal him back again. And in the middle of all that is the gorgeous Janice Rule as Widmark's girlfriend, who doesn't want to be his girlfriend anymore and falls for Bill Holden. And it's a movie called Alvarez Kelly. And like good old-fashioned Westerns of yore, it's got a theme song, darn it, about Alvarez Kelly, that Irish senor, and all kinds of fun cornball stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun. And if you haven't seen it, it's free on YouTube. It's out there. Go watch that one sometime. The point being, of course, the not so subtle point of the Genre Guys is, if you think modern movies suck, you're probably right with most of them. And there are alternatives. Not that long ago, they knew how to tell a good story. And you give a damn for an hour and a half or 2 hours as to what was going to happen next and who the good guys were and how they beat the bad guys and happily ever after. So we try and find some of those and go into a deep dive on each of them and go into the background and some of the special stuff. So that's all out there for you. In addition, of course, to all of these channels covering all of the current theme park news and movie news and gaming news and all of the legal and social and financial stuff that we do. That sum it up?
Sums it up perfectly. I think that's great. I believe at the end of the Hercules Genre Guys, I believe you made the point, look, these films aren't great because they're old. They're great because they're genuinely great. They just happen to be of that time period.
Yes, I'm not a believer in nostalgia for its own sake. They're good because they're good or they're not. And you be the judge.
Fantastic. And we have one more great super chat from Anna Greco. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I do appreciate it. And that's the celebrating 5th super chat, I believe, on a live stream. Thank you so much for spending it with us. And the compliments to Lou are definitely warranted for sure. Lou, you do such a great job with these. Thank you so much for joining me.
I just make it up as I go along, guys. Just know that about me. When you hear me on any of these shows,
Mhm.
honest to God, it's not rehearsed. Even when it's not a quote unquote live show. If I come up with a joke that tickles your fancy, it just occurred to me at that moment. It wasn't premeditated. I'm too old to premeditate.
Oh man, you're so good, Lou. National treasure.
Always think of that great lyric from Harry Chapin in a song called "The Road to Kingdom Come," and he says, "My brain is still a virgin, but the rest of me's well done. You know, I'm just another traveler on the road to Kingdom Come." And Fire Dragon 57, no, I did not. No Jack London. I don't know who that is, but good for him, and it's a big biz. Anyway, let's vamonos, amigos.
Let's vamonos. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all the super chats and your support for this amazing show, this production, and this channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like this video if you did like this video. Share us out, as it helps us out tremendously against the YouTube algorithm, as it always, man, always putting us down for some reason. I don't know what's going on there, but your support makes this show possible. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time. Thank you.